we wanted to bring you the latest on the Texas race. This is a super important Senate primary that takes place on Tuesday, March the 3rd. So just to get ahead of the game, we thought we'd bring you a little update. John Cornyn, the senator, is due up for election in November, but the Democrats think they have a chance to win this Senate seat in Texas. And there is a primary race between Representative Jasmine Crockett, who's on the progressive side of the Democratic Party, and James Talarico, who's a state representative. He is a seminarian, more in the center of Democratic politics. And I think the reason this primary on Tuesday is worth all of you watching, and why we want to just talk a little bit about it and not let it all slide by, is because it's emblematic of the fight that's going on in the Democratic Party at the moment. I don't know, Anthony, that the Democrats can win Texas this time around. We spoke earlier about the Republican side of this primary process, which plays out actually in May, later this spring, May, June. And they've got somebody who's very unpopular and the sitting senator, John Cornyn, running against each other. And if the unpopular guy, Ken Paxton, who's also been done for corruption, is the Republican nominee, as it looks like they could be, and the Democrats nominate somebody on Tuesday who is a centrist, who has appeal, this could be a moment. This could be the moment that the Democrats at least make a good showing in Texas, which, of course, has 40 electoral college votes. Huge state. Once Democrats hope they flip Texas, they think they can keep winning the White House for years and years to come. And that's why this race is interesting. So what do you make of the matchup between Talarico and Crockett?
Well, this will be a litmus test, right? Because Talerico is a sober centrist. Talerico, when I hear him talk, I'm like, okay, wow, he makes common sense. He's a guy I would hire at Skybridge. He's a rational person. But she is a dramatist, right? And she knows how to play the strings of the media, and she knows how to play the strings of the left. And so are we over that? Are we wanting to move as a group of people, at least the people in that district? Or do we want to move them into what I would call sober centrism? And if the answer to that is yes, we want to move it into sober centrism and he wins, that's going to be very good for the Democrats, right? Because as you've talked about, you want to look at Madami, unique to New York, but you want to look at the races in New Jersey and the race in Virginia and say there's where sober centrists sort of won. So it's interesting. And I'm going to make a prediction on this show. I think Talarico is going to win.
He's 10 points behind at the moment. He was ahead in January, and then he had this appearance on Colbert's show, and he suddenly picked up a whole load of money. Democratic early voting in this primary has been through the roof, way higher than it is historically. And the question is which way are those early votes going, and particularly which way are the Hispanic votes going. But it's interesting that you think he's going to win.
Well, can I just tell you why? Because I think he's going to get crossover Republicans.
I think this is the theory of the case. Her theory of the case is Democrats will win, whether it's in the Texas Senate race in November, or whether it's in the midterms in November, or whether it's in the presidential race in 2028. Democrats will win by firing up the base, getting out voters of color and getting out the left, and the base has to turn out. And that's how we're going to win. And you're unapologetically a progressive fighter. His theory of the case is no, that's not how Democrats are going to win. Democrats are going to win in November this year and in November in 2028 by having crossover appeal. And actually what's interesting, Anthony, I've listened to the two of them quite a bit. They are not very far apart on policy. He sounds in some ways like a fight the oligarch Democrat. The way he talks about top-down Americans versus bottom-up Americans, and it's the top is the ones that are, screwing us every time. He actually has quite a lot of economic populism about him, but he presents, because he's in a seminary, he talks about his faith a lot. He's very opposed to Christian nationalism. He presents much more mild-mannered, much more centrist. I think he's more progressive than he presents, but we live in a world where style matters an awful lot. And so I think I think if he wins, watch James Talarico, watch Texas, see, even if they don't win that Senate seat, which I think is still a push for Democrats in November, it's going to be a very interesting race to see them give the Republicans a real run this time around, right?
So, yes. And so I'm predicting that the crossover will happen. And if I'm wrong, when the results come out, Katty, light me up. because she is 10 points ahead. So it is an audacious prediction. But can we go to Cornyn's race for a second? Because I obviously brought this up a few shows ago to point out the Trump factor here. I think this is so much more interesting for me. This is a 35-year incumbent. He's never lost a race in 35 years. He's getting beaten right now. It's a tiny amount of beating. It's 37.3 to 35 in terms of the polling.
But he's been pretty consistently, Ken Paxton has been pretty consistently ahead for a while, even by a little bit. I mean, the polls have been consistent.
Yeah, that's correct. And I'll point out to people, since nobody's going to be above 50% in this race, I mean, very likely, because Wesley Hunt entered the race as well. So nobody's going to be above 50%. So the great irony is here, they spent $95 million on the contest and they can't even approach 50%. So there'll be a May 26 runoff. But just hear me out for a second. Cornyn has spent $70 million of the $95 million, Katty. And he's losing right now, as you're pointing out, fairly consistently to a man who has been impeached, indicted for securities fraud.
Who cares about corruption these days? That's fine. Whatever.
I hate to bring this up because, it's personal, but his wife filed for divorce on him on biblical grounds. Okay, I mean, this is all the stuff that's going on, and Cornyn is still losing, and he's in hot water with the Republican base over his bipartisan support of this gun safety bill. Go, Katty. Tell me how you would describe his relationship with President Donald Trump.
Well, okay, so Cornyn has only really stuck his head above the parapet and opposed Donald Trump on one issue, right?
I think it's really one issue, but I think he's had some soft remarks on other issues because he used to be a normal George Herbert Walker, George W. Bush Republican. And now, by the way, is Susan Collins concerned about the Iranian invasion? I'm just wondering. Is she
concerned,
out there measuring her concern? I just would like to register my concern. I'm Susan Collins from Maine.
In any other time, you would rank John Cornyn as a conservative Republican. He's not squishy. He's not liberal. He's not one of those Republicans who you can rely on, like Lisa Murkowski and Susan Collins, Tom Tillis, to oppose Donald Trump overtly. He's done it on one clear issue, and occasionally maybe he's been a little softer in his support. But when you oppose Donald Trump, to get right back to what we were talking about at the beginning, when you oppose Donald Trump, you get the wrath of MAGA coming down on you.
Yeah.
And now you have the prospect, and I've spoken to Republicans in Texas who are kind of appalled at this. You have the prospect of the Attorney General, Ken Paxton, who's been impeached, whose wife filed for divorce on biblical grounds, who most Republicans in Texas would say is not a good, solid character person.
When my wife filed for divorce on me, she filed for divorce on I want to effing kill you grounds. I don't remember it being biblical.
Yeah.
I don't remember it being biblical.
And just to be clear, the biblical grounds were adultery. Let's just make that very clear before anyone thinks there's anything else.
By the way, she didn't divorce me. Here we are 8 years later, thankfully, happily married. But Katty, just go back to this for 1 second, okay? This is a 4-term senator from the great red state of Texas that has voted, and I'm looking at the voting record, Katty K, 99% of the time he has voted with Donald Trump, and he's running the risk here that he can't survive the primary. So please comment on that.
99% of the time isn't enough in Donald Trump's world. It has to be 110% of the time.
So many years ago in 2019, I'm on the Bill Maher show. I said one thing that the president didn't like. I said I didn't like the nativism. I didn't like him saying that the women in the Congress had to go back to the countries they originally came from. And we're in the after party, and Bill looks at me, he says, "Oh, Trump's going to light you up on Twitter tomorrow." And I said, "He is? Why would he do that? I was here supporting him." No. You were 7 for 8 for Donald Trump, Anthony. You got to go 13 for 10. There's the insight from the great comedian Bill Maher. But by the way, as you know, that's mathematically impossible unless you're cutting drug prices 600%, unless you're bringing down drug prices 600%.
If John Cornyn wins, it will be because he stood up that 1% of the time. And it will give the Democrats a chance of winning Texas. I think you're right. Talarico might win in the primary, but I don't think Democrats win Texas in November. I think they're a little way away from that. They haven't won a statewide race in 3 decades.
Make a prediction for us, Katty.
Yeah.
Will Cornyn be the nominee for the Republicans going into November?
Ken Paxton's going to be the nominee.
Okay, and
is
he'll
my prediction.
win. He'll win?
And I think he could win. Yeah.
Okay.
I don't think Texas is there yet.
Right.
But it's going to happen. And it has a chance of happening because the way it's going to happen is because the Republicans nominate somebody who's not very electable.
Before we go, there's one sneaky thing that I know about the GOP, having lived there for 3 decades. Process in the GOP matters, and the machinery and the procedures around the incumbency could still save Corbyn. I know that sounds crazy. It didn't save Eric Cantor in Virginia on that fateful day when we knew people were going full rogue. But it just might, because he has the money behind him, Katty. But I'm going to go with you, by the way, though. Having said what I just said, I'm going to agree with you that Paxton will likely be the winner there.
And a Paxton-Talarico race is going to be a fascinating one to watch if that's the way these primaries shake out. Super interesting race to watch. A seminarian against a guy who was impeached and whose wife accused him of adultery. There you go. That'll be a fun race.
It's interesting times, Katty. May you live in interesting times.
We'll be back soon, guys. We'll be back later this week.